Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam.
Bruchim Habaim, welcome everyone. It's great to see you here this evening, whether you're joining us here in person or if you're joining us on StreamSpot. I'm very glad to welcome you. I'm Rabbi Michael Wolk, Senior Rabbi of Temple Israel, and on behalf of all of my colleagues, it's a very crowded bima tonight. Cantor Shira Lisick and Rabbi Helene Kornsgold of Temple Israel, and Rabbi Asher Knight, Cantor Mary Thomas, Rabbi Beth Nichols, and Rabbi Dusty Klass of Temple Beth El. I am so happy to welcome all of you here to our Shabbat service tonight. It's been such a long week for all of us, between lots and lots of COVID, between bad weather, threats of bad weather, maybe a little snow, and terrifying news. I think we all need some of that special spiritual nourishment that comes with Shabbat, with our day of rest. So let's get that day started together. Let's welcome Shabbat together. I call to the Bima Temple Beth El's bat mitzvah for this week, Nora Yewich, together with her family, and Cantor Mary Thomas to welcome in Shabbat with the blessing over the candles. Our candles, as you can see, are already burning because at Temple Israel, we observe the prohibition against kindling a flame after sundown, which is the beginning of Shabbat.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Good job.
Nora, Mazel Tov, it's great to have you here. You and I haven't met, but I was the rabbi of the synagogue where your father grew up long after he was there, so it's really cool to have all of you here tonight. So there's a very old story, some of you have probably heard it before, about a Jewish man who is shipwrecked on a deserted island. With all of his free time, he starts to build things and to construct his own miniature city. Years later, he is finally rescued, and he explains to his rescuers that he kept his sanity through his building, imagining that he had a community of people surrounding him. He takes them on a tour of his island, but they're surprised when they see two buildings right next to each other, both prominently displaying Jewish stars on their front. "Why do you need two temples?" they asked him. "Well, that one," he pointed to the first one, "that's the synagogue I go to on Shabbos. But that one, that's the one I would never set foot in." Thanks, I'll be here all night. We are blessed to have our own two temples, Temple Israel and Temple Beth El, here on our little Jewish island of Shalom Park. There are real differences between us. Rabbi Knight and I could debate the finer points of Jewish theology, and all of you could talk about whose services touch your neshamas, speak to your souls more. But one thing that we all share in common this week is that we are all shaken by the terrible ordeal suffered by Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker and his congregants at Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas. We thank God each morning, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Blessed is God, creator of the universe, who frees the captives. We're so grateful right now that this time there were no Jewish people killed at prayer in a synagogue. We're so amazed at that calm, non-anxious heroism of the rabbi. But we're still scared, still on edge, because we know that something like that can happen again, here or at any synagogue. Our differences, the differences between our congregations, between different groups of Jewish people are real. They're important. They matter. We should respect those differences. But today, they fade into the background. Tomorrow morning, when we gather in shul, we'll read the Torah portion of Yitro that tells about the incredible revelation of the Torah as the Jewish people come face to face with God at Mount Sinai. When the Torah tells us that the Jewish people camped at the foot of the mountain, the Torah commentator Rashi, Rabbi Solomon Yitzchaki, teaches us that they came ki ish echad belev echad, as one people with one heart. It's hard to find any kind of Jewish unity in the world today, but we are here to model for ourselves, for our children, for anyone watching, that whenever Jews are attacked anywhere in the world, we stand together. We stand together and we declare that anti-Semitism, whether it's graffiti in local high schools, a deranged gunman in a synagogue, or dangerous inflammatory rhetoric that demonizes the state of Israel, hurts us in real ways. Any of it is too much. But despite the pain and the chaos of the last week, we're not actually here tonight to talk at great length about this most ancient hatred, but rather to answer it with our strongest response, demonstrating a proud, unashamed, and unafraid Judaism by celebrating Shabbat, our sacred day of rest. Tonight's Kabbalat Shabbat is not Temple Bethel's Shabbat experience, nor is it Temple Israel's Shabbat service. We hope that it will help all of us pray together. Some of the customs and the melodies may be new to you, may feel strange, and that's okay. This week we push ourselves out of our comfort zones so that we can be together. Here in Temple Israel, we use Siddur Lev Shalem, which is in front of you in the pews. And if you're joining us on StreamSpot, you can find a PDF of the Siddur of the prayer book on our live stream page under the Shabbat, the Friday evening service link. I'll call pages as we go along, and one helpful hint if the Siddur is new to you to look at is that many of the prayers that we sing out loud can be found transliterated in the red print on the page. So we turn to page 11 for the beginning of Kabbalat Shabbat. Let us go and sing Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God as we raise our voices in song. Page 11, Lechuner Anana.
The maker of all, sure and strong. Let all of creation from mountain to sea hear our song. Lechu ner alina, yai lai 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 lai. In all of God's light, we rejoice. So now let us listen with all of our hearts to hear God's voice. Lechu ner anina, yai lai 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 lai. Yeah.
Lecha Dodi is a beautiful Kabbalistic song in which we welcome Shabbat, which takes the form of a kala, of a bride arriving to her wedding. At the end of Lecha Dodi, we symbolically rise to welcome that kala, and we face the door as if she were about to walk down the aisle. And Jewish tradition often teaches us about imaginary, or let's call them mystical, guests that we welcome on Shabbat, like the kala, or like the angels, the malachim that accompany us home from shul and join us at Shabbos dinner. And we imagine these guests are with us as a way to train ourselves to practice hachnasat orchim, or the welcoming of guests to our communities and to our homes, something that sadly has become so much harder during this terrible pandemic. Last week in Texas, the hostage situation began when Rabbi Citron Walker demonstrated hachnasat orchim by inviting a stranger in from the cold for a cup of tea. The rabbi is known for his kindness, and this act was totally in character for him. And yet, any number of people this week have questioned how he could do such a thing in a world we live in today when synagogues are locked and guarded. Sadly, I found myself telling people that I could not let them into a synagogue. Rabbi Citron Walker has been a teacher not only to his congregation, but to all of us, to all of American Jewry, to all of America this week. And I learned from him that even while we must take the best security precautions we cannot lose our commitment to hachnasat orchim, to the hospitality that has been part of Jewish tradition since Abraham welcomed guests to his tent on a hot day in the desert so many millennia ago. We turn to page 23 and we join together Lecha Dodi. Are we reciting the first 3 paragraphs?
1, 2, 5, and 9.
So if you kept track of that, when we get up to number 9, we rise and we face the door.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela.
Shamor v'zachor b'dibur Yishmi'anu el ha'miyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'ltiferet ve'litila
Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor haberacha mirosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshava techila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela.
Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki va'orech kumi ori. Uri, uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nikabela. Boi v'shalom ateret pala
כולם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
May be seated. Cantor Thomas, I don't know if Cantor Elizabeth shared with you. Sometimes I ask her questions about music in the middle of services.
So it's my turn?
It's your turn, yeah. So that was a new Lecha Dodi tune for us, but I happened to glance at the live stream of your services from last week, and you gave really a beautiful little introduction to this melody, but what it means, like what it sounds like to you. Could you share that?
Sure. So this is the third week in a row at Temple Bethel that we have been trying on this melody by Josh Warshofsky. And Lecha Dodi is a liturgical poem. It is a piyut. It is about 400 years old and written by Shlomo Alkabetz, who is a Kabbalist, a mystic. And the words are very old. They're an invitation for us to greet Shabbat as a bride. But the melody is new and, really 2 or 3 years old probably. And to me, it is very relaxing, very warm, very calming, but with kind of a fervent joy. And it's interesting to me how something can be both calming, but also so joyful at the same time, and that is Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you. Well, going from a new melody back to the 1800s in Germany, we turn to page 28. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like the cedar in Lebanon. The middle of the page at the red arrow, Tzadik Hatamar Yifrach.
Tzadik Hatamar Yifrach, Keres Balanon, Balanon Yiske, Shitu
Doesn't sound that way when I'm the one singing with Cantor Lisick. Now call on Rabbi Beth Nichols.
Tonight we know that there are hundreds, maybe thousands of Jewish communities gathering together. And so many of the services have been described as services of healing and comfort. And over I've seen those words, healing and comfort. And while those are two things that I know we need and that I hope this service is beginning to bring us, we also need the other side. We need the joy and the celebration. And Judaism, I think, gives us the liturgy and the language to both provide comfort when we need it and to celebrate when we need that. And as a community, we come together to support each other in times of difficulty, but also hopefully we get to support each other in times of joy. So it is becoming our custom at Temple Bethel around the time that we recite a Mishaberach Lecholim, a blessing for those in need of healing, to also recite a blessing of Shehechianu, of thanksgiving and gratitude for good things that have happened in our lives, so that we're not only listing and holding in our hearts all of those people who are in need of healing, but also all those people who have things to celebrate that we can celebrate as a community. So we want to invite you to raise your hand if something good has happened to you since last Shabbat or since you were last with us for Shabbat. If there's been something good at work or school or something in your family, to please raise your hand and share with us so that we can recite a blessing of thanksgiving that these things are happening in our community. And when there's a pause, I always tell people, we can't say it unless somebody shares something. So, yes. Your son got a job. Mazel tov. All right, a new job. Yes. 38th anniversary. Mazel tov. Anybody else? It was Adam Ward's birthday this week.
My 2-year-old went back to school after completing the first time she had to quarantine with no sickness.
Yay.
And we survived.
Julia is back in school.
Yes.
Yesowitches, is anything happening in your family? It was Martha's birthday and Nora's becoming bat mitzvah tomorrow. Anybody else? Yes. We ripped up the front carpeting. Wonderful. What color was it? Yes. An A on a math test. Wonderful. Anybody else? Well, I'm going to invite my cantorial colleagues to come back up to lead us in Shehechianu, thanking God for enabling us to reach all of these occasions and to be together tonight as a community to say thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh
Could flip ahead in our Sidurim to page 173. And we now think of those in our lives in need of healing, whether it's physical or spiritual healing this week. And I'm going to ask everyone, if you're praying for someone today, call that person to mind. We're not going to recite the whole long list out loud tonight, but think of them and take a moment and send them a prayer, send them a virtual hug. And then we join together on the side of the page 173, in the Mishaberach, the prayer for healing.
May the source of strength, who bless the
join your voices with ours.
Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We turn back to page 30 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Temple Israel, we recite Mourner's Kaddish twice on Friday night, once at the end of Kabbalat Shabbat, the welcoming service, and then again at the end of Mariv, the evening service. So on page 30, I invite those in mourning or marking a yort site to rise and join me in the words of the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalmad divera kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei techol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha prichu le'ela minko berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata damiran v'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen. May be seated for our Dvar Torah, for our words of Torah tonight. Happy to call on my colleague, Rabbi Asher Knight, Senior Rabbi of Temple Bethel. Rabbi Knight, you know what it means when a rabbi looks at his watch?
No.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Rabbi Wolk, thank you for the invitation to be here this evening. And Cantors, thank you for making it possible. Rabbi Citron Walker was a classmate and has been a friend of mine for over 20 years. And it's not hyperbole for me to say that I passed some of my courses with Charlie's help. We also served congregations in the same area for 9 years, as I served a congregation in Dallas, Texas. And Anna and I were able to see the growth of the Citron Walker family and spend summers together at the URJ Green Family Camp. So all of this hit home personally and professionally. Last Shabbat, Rabbi Citron Walker prepared a sermon and text study focused on David Brooks's op-ed in the New York Times titled, "America is Falling Apart at the Seams." Brooks talks about the rising tide of bad behavior in America and drug epidemics and hate crimes, polarization, anger, and fear. And Brooks lamented over the hostility that Americans have for one another and suggested that there must be a spiritual or moral problem at the core of America. It seems like America is handling one too many fires at the same time. As a people, we have stood before burning fires. This isn't the first time. Not just the fires of our history of the Shoah and the pogroms, the flames that consumed the temples in Jerusalem, but the fires of our prehistory, as in the famous midrash about the beginnings of the Jewish faith and of Abraham's journey in the world. And according to a legend, Abraham was traveling from place to place when he saw a birah doleket, a castle alight, ablaze with brightness. And there Abraham gained consciousness of God for the first time. But what exactly did Abraham see? According to some, the castle was simply radiant with beautiful light. But most of our commentators argue for a more literal reading of the Hebrew word deleket. For them, the palace is a light because it's on fire, engulfed in flames. And the difference is profound, especially when the castle in the Midrash represents God's world, our world. What kind of castle is it? We Jews have always asked, what kind of world do we live in? Is it bright with beauty or raging with fire and destruction? The answer from the heart of our tradition and from the heart of our lives and from the heart of what we have experienced this last week is both. Our world is beautiful and bright, and our world is on fire. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, "One may look upon the world with enthusiasm and absorb its wonder and radiant glory. One may also see and be shocked by its ugliness and evil." The world's wonder and delight are as close to us as the next sunset, the laughter and a child's voice, an act of courage like we saw last week, or an interfaith community showing up in support and solidarity for our community. Or perhaps it's in the tenderness of a loving touch. And the world is clearly aflame too. The burning dehumanization from which we might try to shield our eyes, the stubborn and virulent reality of anti-Semitism in America and abroad, the struggle of migrants and refugees around the world, the scourge of violence, of hate and terrorism and xenophobia that degrade God's human image every single day. The castle is aglow, but the castle is also ablaze. And we are the descendants of Abraham, Judaism's first responder. The Abraham who was in the face of a world on fire began his journey with God, entered into a covenant of compassion, and founded a people committed to responsibility. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs reflects on our Midrash, Jewish faith begins not in wonder that the world is, but in protest that the world is not as it ought to be. It is in that cry, that sacred discontent, that Abraham's journey begins. This last week has reminded us that we are a people called to amazement at the miracles of the world and to the grief at its brokenness. And then to sense of responsibility of bringing our world towards greater justice, greater compassion, greater healing. No matter what op-ed page we read, no matter what station our radios or TVs are always turned to or never turned to, and certainly regardless of our political affiliations, we have to remember that first requirement of being a first responder is to notice when something's burning. Some of us have noticed the fires for some time, and some of us noticed this week. Some of us cried out to God, some of us held our breaths. Over 11 hours last Shabbat, we saw the world is on fire. In the subsequent hours and days, we saw that the world is aglow with beauty and courage and kindness and compassion. And we all thank God and the first responders when Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker and his congregants were finally safe. Rabbi Citron Walker reminded us to have gratitude in this moment. Gratitude is a spiritual practice, and his wisdom is Jewish wisdom. Our gratitude grounds us and centers us. And I also can't help thinking that text study he prepared to teach about David Brooks's op-ed about America fraying at the seams, because if COVID hadn't been enough, and partisan rancor hadn't been enough, and events like this last week sure seemed like enough to remind us again that the world as it is, our country as it is not as it ought to be. So we get to this week's Torah portion, Parshat Yitro. Our people, as Rabbi Wolk said, are at Mount Sinai, and Moses receives the 10 Commandments, and God delivers what one scholar calls the 10 counter commandments, because they were counter to Egypt, counter to dehumanization, counter to resignation and status quo. However accustomed to their own gradation the Israelites had become, this is what you might call a Judaism of high expectation. In this Judaism, there is no ducking the burning castle and claiming we don't notice it. The Judaism of Mount Sinai creates for us and for a ragtag band of ex-slaves an alternative consciousness, an alternative promise, hope in an alternative future that is different from what the Israelites experienced in Egypt. And when they catch hope, when the Israelites caught hope, they begin to develop the courage of moral imagination. That historical circumstance is not destiny, that this inspiring demand of Sinai, not the deadening routine of slavery in Egypt, gets the last word. And we are all heirs to that hope. All of us here tonight or at home must be guardians of the precious moral imagination. That's what propelled our people forward in other ages when we experienced pain and suffering and anti-Semitism. Circumstance is not our destiny. Yes, the anti-Semitism of now is real, but that's not how we define ourselves. Rather, we choose to define ourselves as the first responders in righting the world's wrongs. The great faith of moral imagination is about God's faith, and God's faith in us when our own faith falters, when we are tired and frustrated and sad and angry. The God of Mount Sinai pleads for help, giving to us the 10 Commandments, so that in our acts, in our caring for each other, in our community, and beyond our community too, we become a light unto the world. Abraham was traveling from place to place when he saw a birah doleket, a castle alight, ablaze with brightness. In it, he saw the flames of injustice. In it, he saw the light of beauty and of hope. And from it, he sensed a sacred summons. And so his journey began. May the lessons of this week remind us that the world is ablaze with brightness, that we are partners with each other and with God, that the world is indeed beautiful and inspiring, and that our experience with hate does not define our destiny. May our deeds, our courage, our conscience, our love bring more light and goodness to the world. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Knight, for your beautiful words. We turn in the Siddurim to page 39. I invite you all to please rise for the Baruch Hu, the call to worship beginning the evening service, the Mariv, page 39.
Baruch Hu
may be seated. Blessed are you, Adonai, ruler of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from before the light.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המריב הרבים.
Page 40, Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו וקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה.
ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו
Amen.
ישראל.
Page 41.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Continue praying on page 42.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Page 43. Then Moses, Miriam, and the people of Israel joyfully sang this song to you, Micha Mocha Ba'elim Adonai, page 44.
מלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה נורא תהילות אוסף אלה מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה זה אלינו ואמרו זה אלינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נטע הקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה נורא תהילות אוסף אלה ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלומר חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל.
Amen. Call on Rabbi Helene Kornsgold.
During the past week, I read through several poems, emails, divrei Torah, on comfort and healing. And there was one poem about Hashkivenu, which I believe is very appropriate for this moment in time. The poem reimagines God as the mother bird found in Parashat Ki Teitzei in the book of Devarim, of which all of humanity are seen as her little chicks in need of solace, in a world that seems so much in turmoil all around and sees so much pain all around. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Dear eternal source of life, our mother dear, leader in our lives, bring us your children into your nest of peace. V'taknenu be'etzah tova milfanecha, v'hoshienu l'ma'an shemecha. Sing to us, cause us to dance to your words of unity amidst all the divisions we've experienced in our lives. Let your rhapsody become our song of hope, witnessing to the universality of your name. V'hagen ba'adenu uvetzel knafecha tastirenu. Let us feel the comfort of your wings. Let them remind us that all our trials, our fears, our worries, our concerns dissolve in your presence because we are all a part of something greater than ourselves. We are a part of you. Ki el malkeinu matzilenu ata, ki el melech hanun v'rachum ata. For you have watched us grow throughout all generations. You have liberated us from any tyranny that has arisen and shown us an abundant love despite our many shortcomings. Ushmor tzeitenu uvoenu l'chayim u'l'shalom me'ata v'ad olam. Protect us as we leave you and return to you, looking to you as life and peace forevermore. On Shabbat, we don't usually ask God for protection because Shabbat itself is supposed to safeguard the Jewish people, reflecting the peace that comes with the day. However, we know that sometimes, like last Shabbat, that peace can be broken. But the Jewish people are about hope, tikva, hope for the present and hope for the future, not despair. So we come together in solidarity, and we hope and we pray that this Shabbat and all future Shabbatot will truly be days of peace as they should be. Each night and each day, may we all receive a blessing of peace throughout the world. We continue with Hashkivenu on page 45.
So tonight, as Rabbi Wolk said, we're bringing our two beautiful congregations together, and we both had a minhag about Hashkivenu, which included Craig Taubman's Hashkivenu, which I know you all know, so please sing along. So we had this Temple Israel minhag and a Beth El minhag, and we're putting that all together. So we're hoping, we always want comfort and peace, as Rabbi Kornsgold expressed. And this week, we're looking for a little deeper level of comfort and protection. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom leshalom Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom leshalom v'ha'amidenu malkeinu l'chaim chaim ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha shlomecha. When I lay down at night, when I lay down at night, when I rest my head, when I rest my head, oh God, watch over me. Oh God, watch over me. And when the morning comes, we thank Adonai and pray for peace. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim.
Oh, guide my steps and help me find my way. I need your shelter now. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps and help me make this day a song of praise to you. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps.
Oh, guide my steps and help me find my way. I need your shelter now. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps and help me make this day a song of praise to you. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Ushmor tzidkenu vohenu l'chaim u'l'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam ufros alinu sukat shalomecha baruch ata Adonai haborei sukat shalom alinu v'kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
In a moment, we're going to stand for the words of the Amidah, words that we're going to recite silently on page 47 and through the successive pages. And you'll find either the prayers on the pages as an invitation to potentially just find a word or find a phrase or find something that draws you in, as our prayer book invites us to get lost a little. And if you get lost in the way, just consider the prayers of your own heart. We rise with the words on page 47.
46.
46, excuse me.
Shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם. ביני ובני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת בי נפש, שבת בי נפש, שבת בי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריב ימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולם היה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן.
Silent Amidah begins page 47.
When you've completed your Amidah, you may be seated.
Page 54, Kaddish Shalem.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. ועל מה תפרח חירותי ומניח מלכותי בחיי חול ובמכון ובחי את כל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רב מבורך. לעולם עולם ועלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתלש בנקודשה בריחו. Min kommer jag ta beskriva tjusbekata v'nachamata damiran me'alma v'imeru. Amen. Tikabal tzolton v'alton zuchayisvel kodam avuhon v'ishmaya v'imru. Amen. Yehi shamara v'min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'el kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'imroma v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'el kol Yisrael v'el kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. Amen.
On page 55, we rise for Kiddush, and I invite the Bat Mitzvah of the week, Nora Yeswich, to come on up and lead us together with Cantor Thomas.
Yeah, I can do that. Do you want to do that? Oh, you left them. Come.
And family.
Yeah, this is good. You're so great.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Arei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat koshon, v'ahava uvratzon hinhilanu, zikarat lema'aseh bereshit, ki hu yom tehilat le'ikra kodesh, zecher litziat mitzrayim, ki vanu v'harta, ve'tanu kidashta, mikol hamim, v'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava uvratzon hinhaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh hashabbat. Amen.
L'chaim.
Chaim. Asher kochech to Mazel and Mazel Tov to Nora and family. Thanks for being a good sport and being here tonight. Page 56, Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא טמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטל שמיים ויוצר ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת זו מגובי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אלון, אבן מלכנו אבן תשועתו, כה כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, בארץ יתערן עוד. רק כן נקבל לך לרום, כי המלכות שלך יומית ימלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
May be seated. This Shabbat at Temple Israel, we observe the yort sites of Sheldon Gray, Philip Richmond, Dorothy Rosenberg, Judy Ogen, Sheila Goldsmith, Louis Kaufman, Harry Benjamin, Annabelle Snyder, Shirley Herbstman, Barry Bucketman, Suzanne Hertz, Robert Stark, Samuel Rachelson, Aaron Mund, Claire Goldfarb, Daniel Solomon Sherqui, Barbara Feldman, Alfred Schoenwalter, Abner Katlowitz, Pauline Levine, Joseph Rabba, Arlene Warschauer, Marie Steiner, Rachel Weinstein, Frank Brodowski, Hildir Pratt, Gerald Friedman, Sandy Bogner, Tess Mann, Norman Steinman, Pauline Maddens, and Mildred Goldfarb. And we also extend condolences to families in the midst of Shloshim, the 30 days following the death of a loved one, to Greg and Brett Steinberger, and to Gail Halverson for the passing of Norman Steinberger of blessed memory.
Temple Bethel is in a period of Shloshim, the first 3 days after the deaths of Jeanette, Jeannie Kavalis, Judith Cohen, Judy Good, Iz Greenwald, Ilya Margolis, Marshall Romaine, Todd Sherrill, Norman Steinberger, and Bernard Wind. We also mark with sympathy and sadness the yahrzeits, the anniversaries of the deaths of Gerald Alpert, Mayor Berlin, Sheila Biber, Sylvia Bornstein, Harold M. Brightman, Leo Brodsky, Fanny Yasipovich Brodsky, Mildred Budin, Rose Califf, Edward M. Diamond, Ruth Eisenberg, June Eisenberg, Augusta Ellis, Frida Firstman, Elsa Fink, Grace Foster, Shirley Feidelson, Mark Grano, Harold Green, Joseph Nathan Hankin, Margaret Hesberg, David Horowitz, Ben Jaffa Jr., Arthur Juris, Milton Robert Kane, Noah Kaplan, Walter Klein, Susan Kramer, Meyer Martin Levin, Gustav Levy, Herman Lichstein, Maurice Medonik, Max Malasky, Adolf Malasky, Daniel Pepper, Silly Popper, Lawrence Coiloro, Anna Pearl Rosenbaum, Arlen Ruby, Dorothy Sachs, Solomon Schwartz, Alan Schubert, Jenny B. Schufro, Sally Ann Simmons, William J. Billy Simon, Erwin Smolin, Bunny Steinman, Harold Sweet, Hadley Wallace, Watson, Larry Wayne, Harry Wohler, and Lillian Uman.
Turn to page 58, and I invite those in mourning or marking a yortzeit to rise and join me in the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divera kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lomei omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata damiran v'yalma v'yimru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen Oseh shalom bimromav Yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May be seated. We think of anti-Semitism as the world's oldest and most resilient hatred, a hatred that shape-shifts over time to demonize Jews in whatever way is most abhorrent at the time. With our history, it's easy to feel alone, to feel that we are on our own. But in that world that Rabbi described before, that world that's beautiful but burning at the same time, we know that anti-Semitism also exists among a constellation of different hatreds that interact with each other in their attempt to hurt those who are different. And we appreciate that we have a blessing that Jews of many other places and times did not have, that we have friends and neighbors who stand alongside of us, leaders of other faiths who teach their communities about what we are experiencing. And I'd like to acknowledge the presence of other faith leaders who have come out tonight, even with the threat of snow, to be with us tonight as we strive to move past the events of last week. If you are a visiting faith leader and you'd like to share your name, I invite you to please rise in your place and share your name when I come to you. Start over here. Sure.
I'm Regina Priestolashi from Mechmed and Parkwood Baptist. There's some names of mine. Nina Wynn, United Methodist.
Sam Robertson, retired Presbyterian, USA.
Joanne Sizo, I'm the pastor at Grace Presbyterian Church in Fort Mill, South Carolina.
Collegiate St. Columbia State Community in Mechmed.
Thank you all for being here. I haven't met most of you yet, so I look forward to the time when we can sit down and enjoy coffee or some other beverage, but look forward to talking hopefully sometime soon. I call on Reverend Ladane McLeese-Pulaski for a word of greeting from McMinn, Charlotte's Interfaith Network.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And thank you, all of you. It really has been a service of healing and comfort and joy. Amazing. Thank you. I bring you greetings from McMinn and acknowledge all of our members and board members who are here with us tonight, and all the many more who I know are tuning in on the live stream. On November 9th of this past year, I gathered with some of you in this sanctuary for remembrance of Kristallnacht, the awful night of violence in 1938 that marked the acceleration of the Nazi campaign of Jewish persecution, a night which a few in this congregation personally experienced. In the horrifying attack at Congregation Beth Israel, there is an echo of that brutal night. An echo that resounds in every Jewish sanctuary and every Jewish heart. In every act of anti-Semitism, there is that echo. Every time children have to walk by armed guards to enter their sacred spaces of worship and learning. Every time a student finds a swastika painted on the school wall. Every time someone on social media denies the Holocaust. Every time a white nationalist chant says there is no room in this country for Jews, there is an echo. Every time people gather in prayer and calculate how far it is to the nearest exit. Every time a rabbi schedules active shooter training. Every time someone starts to put on a kippah or a Star of David and stops and has a second thought. Echo after echo after echo. It is almost more than even the most stalwart heart can hold. So let me tell you what I pray. I pray that the echoes won't sound just in Jewish synagogues and Jewish hearts. I pray that the echo will resound in the services of Christians and Baha'is. I pray that it will resound in the sermons of Muslims and Unitarians. I pray that it will reverberate in the meditations of Buddhists and Hindus. I pray that it will ring out in the songs of Sikhs and New Thought practitioners. I pray that as we all kneel down, light lamps, read scripture, as we all chant and sing and dance, at churches and mosques and temples and gurdwaras and viharas and spiritual centers and at our home altars, that the echo be always in our ears, our minds, our hearts. Grief echoes. Pain echoes. So does solidarity. So does love. What one heart cannot bear, all of our hearts together can. Though the weight of the world would crush each of us, it can be borne by all of us. May it be so.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend. Now a word of greeting from Temple Israel's President, Teresa Brenner.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Reverend Polsky, for your words of comfort and support, and to all the community leaders who are joining us here, both in person and online. It means a great deal to the Jewish community here in Greater Charlotte. Welcome Temple Israel and Temple Bethel, friends and families, for joining us in services in person and online. What a beautiful Unity Shabbat. Thank you, Rabbi Wolk and Rabbi Knight, Cantor Lissick and Cantor Mary Thomas, Rabbi Kornsgold and Rabbi Nichols for such a joyful and healing service. Rabbi Nichols, I'm glad you gave me permission to speak about joy because I had words of healing and comfort here prepared, but it's so wonderful to be able to add beauty and joy into my remarks. Mazel tov to Temple Bethel's bat mitzvah Nora and her family and friends. Thank you for letting us be a part of your simcha. After services this evening, we will have a special Oneg Shabbat sponsored by Generations at Shalom Park. So if you're in person, please join us at the back of the sanctuary or in our social hall. It's all a blended space currently. And Suzanne Pugh, who's the CEO of Aldersgate, asked that we also share just a few sentences from her. The Aldersgate and Generations family share in your grief, and our hearts are saddened by the anti-Semitic sentiments and actions in the world. We pray for healing and safety and perseverance and peace for the congregants of Congregation Bethel and Jews around the world, and we are proud to stand strongly with our friends at Shalom Park. Services resume tomorrow morning at 9:30. And Rabbi, I had always thought when a rabbi looked at his watch when the president was speaking, it meant hurry up. So with that, I say Shabbat Shalom.
Well done.
It does mean something. All right. Our colleague and friend, Rabbi Menachem Creditor, told me that he wrote this next song on the occasion of the birth of his daughter, who was born on September 11th, 2001. And he asked, in a world that was quite literally on fire, how do we build a world with compassion and love for my little girl and for the future? Olam chesed yibaneh. We build this world with love.
Olam chesed yibaneh, yalalai, yalalai, yalalai. 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 I will build this world from love. Yalalai, yalalai, yalalai. And you must build this world from love. Yalalai, yalalai, yalalai. And if we build this world from love, yalalai, 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 then God will build this world from love. Yalalai, yalalai, yalalai.
We're generally told not to begin or end the service with logistics. Doesn't sound good, but just to clarify, we have a Shabbat treat, an Oneg Shabbat for people in the back if you would like, but we don't really encourage us to eat together at this point. If you're feeling really hearty, feel free to take your food and join us on the in the front portico, or feel free to take it to go. But Shabbat Shalom, and thank you all for being here tonight.
Shabbat shalom.